Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane Pro and HD video blog for the 10th of July, 2013. Obviously, we are still tracking Tropical Storm Chantal, although I thought for sure with a pressure of 1,011 millibars and its just terrible appearance on satellite imagery that it would die overnight into an open wave. But the value of the hurricane hunters definitely coming into play once again as they flew out and investigated and discovered that there is still, ever so slightly, a surface circulation still associated with Chantal down here just to the south of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, moving briskly off to the west. And the forecast track, as you can see, has changed, now swinging off to the left of the current or the previous forecast, no longer bringing it into the Bahamas, no longer bringing it across the Dominican Republic. As an example here, a pretty vast, pretty quick, sudden change in the track overnight, and that's because of that very fast movement to the west. That hasn't changed much, so the model guidance, all the different parameters indicating more of a westward track. So now Jamaica and Cuba and then South Florida, I won't say under the gun because we're not looking at a hurricane or anything like that, but this will spread a lot of heavy rain, and that is something that should not be discounted or taken lightly. Looking at the visible satellite animation, you can tell very amorphic in its appearance. We do not have that round banded, S shape to it with spiral bands coming in that you'd expect to see in a well-developed tropical storm or a hurricane. That is non-existent right now. You can also see, as I highlight this area, it looks more like a derecho event or a straight line group of thunderstorms, or some people call it a mesoscale convective system, just a blob of thunderstorms. And you can even see all these different clusters of storms in here, linear in nature, no banding and turning of the clouds at all. I mean, it really just looks poorly organized, a very, very weak surface circulation. However, in this area across the Dominican Republic, some pretty high cloud tops moving through there, so you bet that there's some heavy rainfall. That is going to spread across Haiti over the next several hours. Then eventually, this entire mess will work its way towards Cuba and Jamaica. And finally, eventually, possibly, if it survives, up into Florida, where heavy rain is a possibility in that region. In fact, looking at a water vapor shot, you can tell a lot of energy in the area. There's that sharp edge to the clouds. You just don't expect to see that in a tropical storm. But a lot of moisture, a lot of energy to work with across the region. So this will tap into that and drop a lot of heavy rain across the greater Antilles down here, eventually portions of the Bahamas, and then possible into South Florida, depending on the track of this system. If we go look at the computer models, this is important. The models have been trending west more and more. This is the very early models from this morning, and you can see there's even more evidence of that. I want to use the highlighter, especially here early. You can see this sort of spread down here, not necessarily coming into Cuba over the more mountainous part. And it's interesting to note that maybe, just maybe, this will swing possibly right over Jamaica and come into the eastern Gulf. That wouldn't surprise me. And if it does avoid this landmass down here, it may survive, especially since ocean heat content in this region is much higher than where it was headed over in the Bahamas, for example, where the ocean heat content was low to moderate at best. In this region, the ocean heat content is much higher, so it's got a lot more energy to work with. But I think the upper level winds are what's going to go against this system more than anything, and the fast forward motion. It's never been able to slow down and really gather itself, and so it's been just a mess the whole time. All right, so a couple things we want to look at here. Where is it? I guess we'll start off with the upper level winds. I'm going to try to explain this as best I can. We're looking now, you remember in previous videos this week, I've been talking about the atmosphere as having layers. Well, this is important because now we're looking at the 200 millibar layer, or way up high, what we call the outflow level If it was a hurricane, we would be looking at the outflow level of the hurricane. Well, in this case, it's not. It's a meager little tropical storm sitting right down here to the south of Hispaniola. So we're looking at upper level winds, and they're fairly light across the region. I'll zoom in a little bit here so we can tell a little bit more about what's going on. Upper level winds not very strong, and you can tell the intensity of the winds because of how many flags are on these wind barbs, for example. And so the more flags there are, the stronger the wind is. In other words, the winds up here are blowing in excess of 30 knots, whereas the winds down here in the upper levels are blowing at 5 to 10 knots at the most. But it's not ideal because you don't have anticyclonic flow established over the system very well. There's a little bit of anticyclonic flow right here. You know, it's just like a clockwise flow. We have a little bit of that, but not much. Chantal located right there, headed in apparently this direction right here over the next few days. This is the current map. Let's go out to tonight. So this is valid this evening, and you can see if I highlight it, Chantal would be located somewhere in this area. Upper level winds starting to increase right here. So the shear really going to be a factor, it looks like. If we continue on out to the next map, this valid 48 hours out. Chantal located probably somewhere near Cuba in here. Now we have westerly winds going right across the top of it at 10 to 15 knots or so. That is not a good sign at all for the tropical system, as it'll be running head on into upper level winds going against the flow of the system here like that as it comes in. That's just not a healthy sign. So I would expect, as the Hurricane Center does, that somewhere in this area Chantal will die, become an open wave, dissipate, and just be a remnant moisture packet that works its way into South Florida, maybe the eastern Gulf of Mexico. We'll have to wait and see. However, if we go and look out into time here at 5 days out, 120 hours, if it were to survive, and that is a big if, there is indication that a strong upper level anticyclone is going to start to develop over portions of the Gulf of Mexico with a strong upper level low off to the east here, creating a very favorable outflow pattern between the two. So, depending on where Chantal and its remnants wind up, if it survives enough to get into the Gulf here somewhere, maybe upper level winds will support additional development sometime next week. That's a big if, and it's a stretch to think that it could last that long. But it's come a long way here through the island, surviving all that sheer fast forward motion, the hostile conditions it's had to deal with, and it's still around, so you never say never. I think the biggest thing to take away from this is the rain impact today for portions of Hispaniola and Jamaica, and then eventually possibly into Florida. Again, don't discount that. I try to harp on this for a reason, and that is you think about several inches of rain falling over any area in a short period of time, not to mention, the very least of which is the driving impact for people in a populated area like South Florida. Wow, millions of people crammed into an area where there's a lot of rain falling. That can be a problem. But in areas like Hispaniola with the high terrain, flash flooding, landslides, mudslides could be an issue. So don't downplay the importance of understanding tropical rainfall and how much can fall in a short period of time. Other than that, the impacts from this will be minimal. No storm surge to speak of, no wind to speak of, gusty winds here and there, but certainly nothing to get worried about or to hoist the storm shutters up for. But the rainfall is an issue, and take that seriously. All right, well, that's it for today. We'll keep watching Chantal. The rest of the tropics nice and quiet. Might be a couple of other areas trying to brew over the next week to 10 days. We'll wait and see if that pans out or not. No reason to look that far into the future when it's not a certainty at all at this point. Again, I'm Mark Sudduth. HurricaneTrack.com is my site. Always a privilege and an honor to do these videos for you on Hurricane Pro and HD. Hope you have a good rest of your Wednesday. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.